It's midnight on the radio. The phone lines are open, the signal is strong, and somewhere out in the dark, people are calling in with impossible stories of faceless figures, dark roads, and voices in the static. But the callers aren't the most terrifying thing. It's everything else.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly. And this is the 400th time we've brought it to you. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, and we have a very, very special episode just for you to enjoy, featuring our guest star, Dwayne Whitaker, who you may recognize from Pulp Fiction, The Devil's Rejects, Tales from the Hood, and many other films and TV shows. This episode is extra special for me because what got me into doing this podcast in the first place was that mysterious, unknown void of AM radio. A space that brought all kinds of dreams and nightmares to life. So tonight, I'm recreating that vibe to tell you a story. We'll be tuning in to a little station out of a small town where something big is happening. But before we get to that, I want to say thank you all so much for joining me on this 400 episode celebration. I really went all out, and I hope you enjoy it so very much. It's been a dream to bring you 400 scary stories, and there's no plan on stopping anytime soon. Now, as for tonight, there's something strange about a voice in the middle of the night. On the radio, it can feel like company when the roads are empty, when the house is quiet, when the world outside your window has gone black. It tells you that someone else is awake, someone else is listening. But what if the signal goes farther than it should? What if the wrong thing hears you? Tonight's tale comes from the lonely hours after midnight, where a paranormal talk show host opens the lines and invites the unknown to speak. But once a voice enters the void, it may not be so easy to get it back out. Final broadcast by Enrique Couto.
For joining us.
You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. Talk to me.
It's midnight. It's dark. The quiet can be overwhelming. It's okay though, because you are lost in the void. And I'm Randall Burr. It is a beautiful, clear night over the Great Plains. The ionosphere starts to dissipate, and our beefy 20,000 watts reaches hundreds of miles into the ether. No way to know exactly how far, so who needs syndication when we've got the laws of physics? We're happy to have you join us. Our phone lines are open for you to share your experiences, firsthand or otherwise, with the strange, unusual, and paranormal. Our number is 308-157-6174. While you're revving up your dialing fingers, we have some news to get to. Researchers in northern Norway are reportedly investigating strange blue lights moving under a frozen lake near Tromsø. That's how you say it, Tromsø. Tromsø? Can you imagine being in the northern part of Norway? I mean, the country basically means north. How far north do you get before you're finding yourself south? Well, local residents say the lights appear just after midnight and seem to follow people walking along the shore. Officials insist it may be an unusual but natural phenomenon. However, fishermen in the area claim the lights have been seen for generations, always before someone disappears. Could there be some sort of extraterrestrial lurking in the deep? The water is hard to investigate. The oceans are as mysterious as outer space, at least when it comes to our understanding. It could be easy to cozy up under the ice and wait for someone to pass by alone, snatch 'em up, and keep gathering intelligence on the volatile ape species. Of course, who knows what pertinent details we just might be missing here. While it is a long shot, a very long shot, it would be a dream to have someone out that way give us a call. These news stories are always so hard to grasp properly because of editorial influence, usually used to make them more palatable for the public. As my wife Jen loves to say, a lie can travel around the world before the truth even has time to get the curlers out of her hair. Okay, let's head down south a ways. I mean, way south. Ranchers outside Bahia Blanca, Argentina, say several herds of cattle were discovered standing silently in near-perfect rings before dawn, refusing to move for hours. No sign of predators, storms, or trespassers were found. One ranch hand claims he heard a low humming sound, quote, like power lines under the ground, even though there are no lines for miles. Vibrations, electromagnetic radiation. It's a wild thing. It's how you're listening to this right now. These invisible waves all around us, zooming past our faces while we go about our day. But what do these vibrations have in common? Communication. The waves carry tones, codes, words, whatever you want to put on them. Seems like the cattle are receiving. So, who's broadcasting? I've got my theories, but that is for another time. Back in North America, listeners in remote Manitoba, Canada, say a weather radio broadcast was interrupted by an unknown voice calmly repeating, "Do not look at the tree line." The message allegedly aired for 13 seconds before normal programming resumed. Federal authorities deny any such interruption occurred, but recordings have begun circulating online. I'm not sure what I find stranger about this, the ominous message or the fact that so many people were concurrently listening to weather radio, let alone getting a recording of it. My producer Boyd is reminding me that with smartphones in everyone's hands, capturing a random moment isn't so unusual. To that I say, Mr. Smarty Pants, if they have an iPhone in their hand, why on earth are they checking the radio for the weather? Then again, I shouldn't talk too much smack, considering we are over the air and grateful for every damn one of you listening. And my diligent producer has queued up a recording of the sound for us to sample. Play it for me, Boyd.
Do not look at the tree line. Do not look at the tree line. Do not look at the tree line.
Well, I would be lying if I said that wasn't a bit eerie. Could it be a frequency outside of our normal listening, or maybe an echo of a warning from the past? Our past, though, that's a little harder to say. But I promise you, our radio waves aren't trying to trick you into anything beyond supporting our sponsors. That's the Randall Burr Promise. Perfect timing, Boyd. Heading back to Asia, a small village in Rajasthan, India, has locals saying an abandoned hilltop temple has begun ringing its bells every night at 3:17 a.m. Residents report that the sound continues for exactly 4 minutes, even when the temple doors are locked and the interior is empty. A local official dismissed it as pranksters, though no footprints or signs of entry could be found. I swear I'm smarter than even I thought, because we're back yet again to the basest of elements on this rock of ours. Frequency. Vibration. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it just keeps coming up. The first vibrations to exist were from the Big Bang itself. In a way, everything from the alarm you wake up to the sound of your wife nagging you to finish raking the leaves is inspired by the cosmic beginning of it all. I'm just kidding, Jen. I swear I'll get to it tomorrow. Whether you are a dyed-in-the-wool believer or just a casual observer of the strange and paranormal, you can't help but appreciate the poetry of that reality. We're all just echoes of the greatest event ever known. Woof. After all that pontificating, I think I need a drink. Just flat water, my friends. Sadly. Transportation officials near a desolate Nevada highway interchange say several traffic cameras captured a tall, human-like figure cross the road over a 6-hour period. See, honey, me taking a couple of weeks to bag up some leaves seems pretty fast in comparison, right? Oddly, troopers sent to investigate found no one there, and the figure does not appear on dash cams from the vehicles passing at the time. We actually have an eyewitness to the events on the line. Thank you so much for joining us on Lost in the Void to share your experience. I know you've requested your name not be given, and I can't say I blame you. You say you witnessed this figure for yourself?
I appreciate you having me on.
Of course.
I've gone back and forth on whether I should talk about it publicly at all, because once you say something like this out loud, people start fitting you for a tinfoil hat.
Yeah, I get that.
But yes, I saw it myself with my own eyes on that stretch of highway. Not on a screen, not later on some clip somebody sent me. I was there, behind the wheel, and whatever that thing was, it crossed right in front of me.
Reports called it human-like. Would you say that's fair, or has reporting tried to shift the narrative in a different direction?
Human-like is fair in the same way a mannequin is human-like.
Okay.
Or something you catch out of the corner of your eye and your brain rushes in to label before it really knows what it's looking at. So no, I don't think that wording is the media trying to spin it into something more sensational. If anything, I think it softens it. Because if I say a person, that isn't right. And if I say a creature, that sounds like I'm trying to sell a monster story.
Right.
What I saw looked enough like a person to trigger that recognition immediately. Head, shoulders, arms, legs, upright posture. But the longer you looked, the less human it felt. The proportions were off. The movement was off. And more than any one detail, there was this absence to it. Like it occupied space visually, but not physically the way a living person should. So yes, human-like is probably the most honest phrase for it.
All right.
But I'll tell you this, if you had seen it yourself, you would not have come away thinking, oh, that was just some guy crossing the road.
I hope my journalistic demeanor hasn't made you think I don't think this is interesting and unnerving. Was it animal-like or more like a person?
Absolutely more like a person.
Okay.
It was upright the whole time. 2 legs, 2 arms, head where it ought to be. It wasn't hunched over like an animal, and it didn't move on all fours or anything like that. If you'd caught just a split-second look at it, you'd have said it was a tall man crossing the highway. But the reason I can't just leave it at that is because the closer it got to the center of my headlights, the less natural it seemed. Not animal, no, but not fully, comfortably human either.
Okay.
It moved with this eerie kind of purpose. No startle, no reaction to the car, no little adjustments people make when they realize they're in danger. An animal darts, freezes, bolts. A person flinches, shields their face, turns their head, something. This thing just kept going like the road and my truck meant nothing to it.
Wow.
So if you're asking me to choose, I'd say person-shaped. Not person, person-shaped.
All right. Well, did you attempt to document it?
In the moment, no. And I know people always want to ask that, and I get it. But when you're driving on a dark stretch of highway at 2 in the morning and something steps out in front of your vehicle, your first instinct is not, let me grab my phone. Your first instinct is, don't hit it or don't die.
That's fair.
What I did do was pull over about maybe a quarter mile up once I got myself under control. My hands were shaking so bad I fumbled my phone the first time I tried unlocking it. I took a few pictures of the road behind me, the shoulder, the area where I thought I saw it cross, but of course, there was nothing there by then. Just blacktop and darkness. When I heard there was traffic camera footage from roughly the same stretch, that's when it really turned my blood cold. Because then it wasn't just my word against my own nerves anymore. Something was there. Or at least, something showed up.
Did you make an attempt to contact authorities about what you'd encountered?
Not right away. I pulled over first, tried to calm myself down, and spent a few minutes arguing with myself about what exactly I would even say.
Fair concern.
There's something on the highway is one thing. I saw something that looked like a person until it didn't is another.
Yeah.
I knew how that would sound. But yes, I did call it in. I kept it simple. I said I'd seen a figure crossing the road on that stretch, that it could be a hazard, that somebody might be out there. I did not give them the whole stranger side of it at first.
Fair.
I just wanted someone to check the area. The operator asked if it was a pedestrian, and I remember hesitating. I said, I think so, because that was the closest honest answer I had. I gave them my location as best I could. Later on, after I started hearing there may have been camera footage from near that same area, I did speak to someone again and gave a fuller account. And you can hear the temperature in the conversation change when you move from possible person on roadway to describing how it looked and how it moved.
I can imagine.
There's this polite silence people get when they're still on the line with you, but they've already decided they know what you are.
With footage confirmed to have captured something on the road, did they attempt to offer you any explanation?
Not a real one, no. What they offered were possibilities, reflections, compression artifacts, a person outside the camera's effective depth, heat shimmer even, which, out there at that hour, didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Not at all.
One of them mentioned frame interpolation, like the system had somehow built a figure out of bad visual information. That was the closest anyone came to putting a label on it.
Wow.
But here's the problem with that. Those explanations might work if all you had was the footage. If this were just a weird shape on a traffic monitor and nobody had seen anything in person, then sure, you can start talking about glitches and lensing and digital ghosts in the machine. I understand that. But I was there.
Right.
I saw it with my own eyes before I ever knew there was camera footage. So when they start explaining the footage to me as if the footage is the entire event, it feels like they're answering a smaller question than the one I'm asking.
Trying to control the narrative.
They kept circling back to what the camera may have captured. I kept trying to bring them back to what was actually on that road. And the unsettling part was, once they realized I wasn't backing off the fact that I saw it myself, the explanations got vaguer, not clearer, less technical, more like, these systems pick up strange things sometimes. Which may be true, but that's not an explanation.
No.
That's a way of ending the conversation without saying you don't know.
A total blow-off.
So no, nobody gave me an explanation that accounted for both things at once.
That is so bizarre. They were almost answering the questions they would prefer you'd asked rather than listening to you. Almost like it was a script. Have you spoken to anyone else that saw the figure or anyone investigating it outside of the very helpful authorities?
I have spoken to a couple of other people. One was another driver, not that same night, but within a day or two of it becoming a local story. He reached out through somebody who knew somebody, that kind of thing. He didn't want his name out there either. Said he saw something tall on the shoulder just past one of the camera points, early morning, still dark. He told me the strangest part wasn't what it looked like. It was that when his headlights hit it, he expected a reaction.
Sounds familiar.
But it just stayed there, almost like it didn't register him at all. The other person wasn't a witness exactly, more like a county employee who'd heard enough hallway talk to know something odd had happened. He was careful with his words. Never said, yes, this is real. Never said, the footage proves anything. But he did tell me there was a lot more interest in shutting down speculation than you'd expect for a simple camera glitch. But I'll tell you what stuck with me. A woman called me. Older woman, very calm, not dramatic at all. Said her brother used to drive freight through that area years ago, and he had one rule. If you ever saw someone crossing out there late at night and they didn't react to your lights, you kept driving.
Oh.
You did not stop. You did not turn around. You did not go looking. I asked her why, and she said, because if it wants to be seen, you're already too close.
That is sincerely chilling. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience with us here tonight. I'd say it's safe to assume you'll be avoiding that stretch of road for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, without question. I mean, look, I'm not a superstitious man by nature. I've driven lonely roads my whole life. You see strange things out in the desert sometimes. I've always believed most things have an explanation, even if it takes a while to find it. But that stretch of road? No, not now. Maybe that sounds dramatic to some people listening, but there's a difference between being spooked and feeling in your bones that you were in the presence of something you were never meant to notice. And that's what this felt like. Not like I stumbled onto a mystery. Like I crossed paths with something that had always been there, and for one moment, it let me see it. So yes, I'll go the long way around, happily. And I'll tell you something else I haven't really said out loud before. Ever since that night, when I'm driving after dark and I see somebody standing near the shoulder way up ahead, I get this instant flash of panic before my brain catches up and says, no, that's a sign, or that's a mailbox, or that's nothing. But after you've seen one thing that should have been nothing and wasn't, you don't trust the dark the same way anymore.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that story with my listeners, and please stay safe when you're on the roads. And that perfectly sets up our theme for tonight as we take your calls about the dark road and your stories on it. Unknown beings, strange lights, creepy hitchhikers, extraterrestrials. The sky isn't the limit. Now, with all that fresh on our minds, we're going to take a quick break. But when we get back, we'll be taking your calls. You're listening to Lost in the Void, and I'm Randall Burr.
You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. We want to hear from you. You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. Talk to me.
Welcome back to Lost in the Void with Randall Burr on KGAB 940 AM. Tonight we want your calls about dark road encounters. I know I'm not alone when I say that a long, dark road can be anything but peaceful. Especially when you see something out of place and truly realize it's just you, the blacktop, and whatever the hell that was. Our number is 304-157-6174, and the lines are wide open. Put your experiences into the air, into the frequency, with us. Now for a little story time with Randall Burr. Thanks for that, Boyd, and that actually feeds into this little story of mine. You know, my first gig in radio was actually as a producer, which I don't relish in saying is a thankless job. So thanks again, Boyd, for lining up our earlier guests and the pertinent sound effects. See, I thanked you. I'm being the change I want to see in the world. Getting up early was an understatement. The show went live at 6 a.m. Talent would arrive at 5 a.m. to be prepped, and, of course, lowly me would be there at 3 a.m., pulling the news stories, prepping sound effects and music, the whole shebang. Now, this wasn't before computers. I'm not that old, but you couldn't just aggregate news pieces easily. You had to scour the internet. And the connection speed was, lacking, to say the least. So one morning, really the middle of the night is far more accurate, I'm on my way to the station. I lived almost an hour away, but hey, I needed a job in radio. So I would get in my car, coffee in hand, at 2 a.m., smile on my face, can-do attitude, and a prior 2 cups of coffee, already coursing through my veins. Once my hands stopped shaking, it was a pretty peaceful drive I learned to appreciate. However, one night, going up the dark state route in rural Iowa, I noticed something strange off in the distance. I swear it was a hitchhiker, but this was well after hitchhiking had fallen out of fashion. Some people blame murky state laws that put it in a gray area of legality. Personally, I always blamed Henry Lee Lucas, but I digress. It was a particularly groggy drive for me, so I had my windows down to get some cool air on my face. As I drove past this man standing on the side of the road, I got a better look. He was wearing a Canadian tuxedo. For those of you lacking in culture, that is referring to denim on denim, jean jacket, and a pair of jeans. Seemed a little out of style, but back then I wore turtlenecks, so I'm not about to judge anyone's fashion sense. Subconsciously, I slowed down as I was gaining up on him. He was facing away, and I was the only car I had seen on that road in a while. Even with my lights blasting on him, he didn't seem to notice, just standing there. Just as I was about right next to him, he turned suddenly to face me, and I swear it was like he whipped his whole body. His eyes snapped to mine like a magnet, and I could feel the eye contact. He raised his hand up at that exact moment and opened his mouth wide like he was screaming his head off. I didn't get the sense he was scared or desperate from being stranded on the side of the road. It was something else, more primal. As I kept driving, in silence, thinking about what I had seen, I couldn't shake that feeling of him staring right at me. After a minute or two, I decided to roll up my window. You can't be too careful, right? I rolled up my driver's side first. No, I didn't use a hand crank again. Not that old. Jeez. As the window went up, I could hear the wind whistle and stop in my left ear. As I rolled up the passenger side window, I moved my eyes back to the road, and then, out of the corner of my eye, I swear I saw a hand going straight for my face. I swerved the wheel slightly. Thankfully, the road was still empty. As I regained my composure and managed to look around the car, all that stood out was my Jolly Roger air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. It was jostling in the slight breeze coming from the window that I hadn't quite closed. I convinced myself that it was my tired eyes playing tricks on me. I shouldn't drive so tired. Of course, by that point, I had never been so awake in my life. I headed the rest of the way to the station, wide-eyed and sweating. From that night on, I always got a full 8 hours before heading to the station, no matter what. And whenever I drove that road at night heading into work, I would keep my windows rolled up and my eyes on the road. So that's my story. What's yours? Our lines are open at 308-157-6174. Ooh, we're starting with a regular. Pete, you're on the air.
Hey, man, how you been?
Never better, boss. How about you? Guessing you're on another haul across the plains and picked us up on your antennae.
Not quite, at least not yet. But believe it or not, just about 90 minutes out of Chicago, and I'm reading you loud and clear.
See, I told you. Vibrations and frequency. They do what they want to do. So, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I don't have an experience exactly like you described, but I pretty much live on the road. I've been finding myself more and more creeped out.
Sounds juicy. Do explain.
A few weeks ago, I was making a run from Georgia to Manitoba, and I stopped at a truck stop outside of Lexington to gas up and grab a bite. And while I was settling up, I noticed the cashier was just kind of off.
Like, looked strange or?
No, he looked totally normal, like the definition of average, but only thing that stuck out about him is he seemed to be incapable of making small talk. I mean, it's late at night, and I was feeling restless. And I just wanted to chit-chat for a second. I asked him how long he'd worked here, and he just stared at me.
But he did manage to cash you out, right?
Yeah. He asked me if I found everything all right. And I said I had, and he said good. And he asked if I'd had a good night. And I said it was a long one, and he just looked at me, and he went back to work on the register.
That is odd.
And when I started with the small talk, he just stared at me again, all blank.
Like the Gen Z stare? I've seen that before. Like they've never talked outside of a Zoom meeting room.
Yeah, I thought that too. And he was pretty young. And, I chalked it up to awkwardness and never really thought about it more. But then after I dropped my load in Manitoba, I was gassing up to head out for a pickup about 100 miles away. When I walk up to the counter, it's the same guy standing there in the same outfit.
Like deja vu.
Not exactly, because it was a totally different truck stop. I mean, this one was rural and pretty small. All I'd bought was a bag of chips and some nicotine gum. He asked me if I found everything all right, and I said yes, and he said good, and asked if I was having a good night. Exactly the same as before. Exactly the same.
Not entirely uncommon, though, for a cashier.
Right. Well, I mean, I told him I was, and then I guess I was feeling bold because I asked him if he'd ever been to Kentucky before.
And what did he have to say to that?
Nothing. He said nothing. He just he just looked at me. His eyes were blank, and he just went back to cashing me out.
Unsettling.
That's what I thought. Since then, I swear to God, I've seen that guy 5 more times in 4 states. He never has a response if I ask him a question about himself. He doesn't even try to answer. I mean, this trip I've been thinking about that a lot. Wonder if I'll see the guy again when I stop in Missouri for some sandwiches.
I've definitely had the feeling I've done something before, maybe even had that conversation before, but this seems especially unnerving.
Yeah, unnerving. That's what it is. I mean, to be honest, it's made me feel kind of, like out in the open or exposed unless I'm driving.
Well, Pete, all I can say is maybe don't make small talk with small people.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess you're right.
Thanks so much for calling, and have a safe ride across the old US of A. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back taking your calls on Lost in the Void with Randall Burr.
You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. Talk to me. You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. We want to hear from you.
Welcome back to Lost in the Void. I'm Randall Burr, and we're taking your calls right now, and there's no shortage of them, so get on the horn. All right, caller, you're on live with Randall Burr. Do you have a dark road experience to share with us?
Yeah. Hi, Randall. This is Denise in Grand Island.
Welcome.
Mine was out on a county road north of town maybe 4 years ago. I was driving back from my sister's place later than I meant to, and there was this pickup behind me for miles. Not tailgating, not passing, just staying the exact same distance back. And on an empty, dark road, after a while, that starts to get under your skin.
Agreed.
So I sped up a little. It stayed with me. Slowed down a little. Same distance. I remember thinking, okay, this is how people disappear.
I've had that thought cross my mind a few times.
Then I came up on a turnoff and took it kind of sudden, just to lose whoever it was. Randall, there was no truck behind me anymore. No headlights. No engine noise. Nothing.
Did you manage to get a peek at the driver at any point in this encounter?
No, sir. Not once. That was part of what made it so unnerving. I could see the headlights plain as day, but they sat just right where the glare kept me from making out anything in the cab. No face, no shape, nothing. And I did look, more than once. By the end of it, I was less scared of who the driver was than I was of the idea there might not have been one.
As a woman traveling alone, I can imagine it feeling like a nightmare. You're sure he didn't manage to turn off before you looked back again?
I mean, I can't swear to it in a court of law, but I don't think so. That's what I told myself later, of course. That maybe there was a field entrance or a side road I missed. But it was flat out there, Randall. Open enough that I feel like I should have seen headlights swing off somewhere. What bothered me was how instant it was. 1 second, those lights were there, steady behind me, and the next time I checked, just black road.
Worried that he was following you and now he's in waiting or something?
Not that a truck was following me, that it seemed to stop existing between glances.
Almost like it had taken an exit back to its own dimension. Maybe he realized he was late for supper. Thanks, Denise, for your call. Appreciate you. Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, hello, Randall. This is Cal in North Platte. I used to do some nighttime hauling, and I'll tell you, the worst roads are the ones where there's nothing out there but fields and your own headlights. Your mind starts filling in the blanks.
As minds are wont to do.
One night I was coming down a gravel road outside Brady and kept seeing what looked like somebody walking along the fence line, staying just ahead of me. Every time I got close, there'd be nothing there. Then a little farther up, there it was again. Happened 3 times. Finally, I stopped the truck and got out with a flashlight, and all I could hear was the wind and those fence wires humming. Never found a soul out there. Got back in the cab and drove home a whole lot faster than I'd planned.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I gotta ask, what on earth made you want to get out and look for him?
Part stupidity and part pride, if I'm being honest. After the 3rd time, I got more annoyed than scared. You start thinking, either somebody's messing with me, or I'm letting a row of fence posts make a fool out of me. And I think there's something in a man that hates being scared by his own headlights.
Relatable content.
Soon as I stepped out, though, that confidence went missing in a hurry. Whole road felt different with the engine off. Too quiet. Except for those wires singing in the dark.
Was it at least playing a familiar tune?
No, sir. Just that high, lonesome hum fence wire gets when the wind hits it right. But I'll tell you this. When you're standing out there alone at night, it doesn't have to be a melody to get under your skin. It just has to sound almost human enough that you start listening harder than you ought to.
Mysterious hitchhikers standing on the side of the road with a flashlight. That is the kind of creepiness carved out just for dark roads at night. Thanks for the call. Our phones are lit up like a Christmas tree tonight. You'll love to see it. Next caller, tell me something creepy.
Yes, sir. This is Lyle in Hastings.
Welcome, sir.
Creepiest thing I ever had was driving home on a farm road after midnight and seeing a porch light way out in the distance, just sitting there by itself. No house around it I could make out, just that one yellow light. I used it to keep my bearings for a few miles. Then I came over a hill, and it was suddenly right there on my left, hanging from a post in the middle of an empty field. No house, no driveway, no barn. Just a lit porch lamp with moths around it, and nothing under it but dirt. I did not stop to investigate that particular piece of Nebraska real estate.
Was there at least an old foundation? Maybe someone had torn down a structure and left the light for the rebuild.
Not that I could see, Randall. Now, granted, I wasn't exactly conducting a survey out there. I slowed down, leaned over the wheel, and looked hard, but I didn't see any slab. No pile of lumber, no driveway gravel, nothing that said a house had ever stood there. Just that light burning like it expected company.
Oof.
And maybe there was a sensible explanation, but it was one of those sights that feels wrong faster than your brain can explain it. So I kept driving.
That's the thing about dark roads. When things get eerie, you put the pedal to the metal and gun it for home or, at the very least, anywhere else. Thanks for the call. All right, caller, you're on Lost in the Void. Talk to me.
Yeah, this is Wade in Holdridge. I was coming back from visiting my brother outside Alma, taking the back roads because I don't much care for interstate driving at night.
At this point in the show, who could blame you?
Must have been a little after 1 o'clock in the morning. Real clear, real cold. One of those nights where you can see forever and still feel like you shouldn't. I came over a rise and caught something on the right side of the road, crouched in the ditch. At first I took it for a deer. Then it stood up.
Oh.
Too tall for a man to be comfortable looking at, and too lean for anything I know how to name. Long arms, narrow shoulders, head kind of tipped forward like it was listening. It didn't run, didn't spook, just turned a little and watched my truck go by. And I'll tell you the honest truth, Randall, I did not look back.
How tall are we talking here?
Taller than a man ought to be standing in a ditch, and still look higher than the road. 7 feet maybe more. But that's with fear doing some measuring too. What I know is, when it rose up, it did it in one smooth motion, and my brain quit trying to make it into a deer.
Well, I, for one, am glad you made it out of that situation, only a bit freaked out. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take more of your calls. There seems to be no shortage of strange experiences to go around. I'll see you all right after this.
You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. Talk to me. You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. We want to hear from you.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Randall Burr, and you are lost in the void. Our phone lines are open at 308-157-6174. We've been taking your calls about strangest experiences on the road. Whether driving a big rig like many of you faithful listeners do, strange pit stops, trips you've made 1,000,000 times that take more than a wrong turn, and even hotels and motels, which, by the way, I swear most are haunted in some way, but that's just me. Caller, you are live and lost in the void.
Hello, Randall. This is Evan in McCook.
Thanks for calling.
I've had an uncomfortable experience repeat itself at truck stops in different places, and after a while, it stopped feeling like coincidence.
I'm intrigued.
The first time was outside Lexington. Just a tired man at the counter, buying coffee, looking at me a little too long. Not like he knew me exactly. More like he was trying to. He asked if I was from around there.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that on its face, but there was something in the way he asked it that put me on edge. Like the question mattered more to him than it should have. And then I saw him again at another stop. Different place entirely, different weather. Same man, same searching look, same little hesitation before he spoke. And again, the questions. How long had I worked there? Had we met before?
Well,
By that point, Randall, I started to feel like this man wasn't recognizing me so much as trying to make me confirm something for him. And when I didn't, when I just kept the interaction normal, he looked at me like I was the one making it strange.
Well, that would be unsettling, but I have to ask, you said you saw him at another stop, so do you work at multiple truck stops?
Yes. Or, near enough to yes, that most people would not bother separating the two. I am assigned where I am needed. That is the practical way to put it.
Okay.
Some locations are more temporary than others. Some are familiar before I arrive. It is not unusual for me to be in one place, and then another, and have the work feel essentially the same.
Okay.
Realize that may sound evasive.
Yeah.
I do not mean it that way. I only mean that he seemed much more troubled by seeing me where I was supposed to be, than I was by seeing him where he was not.
So you're a traveling cashier. I can't say I've ever really heard of that one before.
You understand how that sounds. Cashier is close enough for most purposes. The work is not always identical, but it is public-facing, transactional, and usually done at night. That is the simplest way to describe it.
Right.
And to be fair, I had not heard of him either. And yet there he was. Repeatedly. So perhaps we both encountered something a little outside the usual categories.
So you're saying this odd customer was following you? Is it that unusual to see the same folks at the truck stops you work at?
Not at first, no. You see the same types of people. Similar faces. Similar habits. The road has its regulars, even when they are not regular in the traditional sense.
Okay.
What made this feel different was not that I saw him more than once. It was the way he looked at me each time, as though each encounter was carrying over from the last one in a way I had not agreed to. Most repeat customers recognize you casually, if at all. A nod, a little familiarity, maybe a joke about coffee. This man looked at me like he was checking whether I had changed, and when I had not, or had not, in the way he wanted, that seemed to disturb him.
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this whole thing. What exactly did he say to you? Were these truck stops in the same area?
No, that was part of it. Not the same area. Far enough apart that the second time should have felt incidental, and the third time should have felt wrong. What he said was never dramatic. That is almost what made it worse.
Okay.
Ordinary questions, asked with too much weight behind them. He asked whether I had always worked nights, whether I was from around there. Once he asked, very directly, if we had met before.
Right.
And there was another question he asked more than once, though not in exactly the same words. He wanted to know how long I had been there. Not employed, not scheduled. There, as though he was not asking about a shift, but about my presence.
Okay, and what were your answers to his questions? I mean, you had met before, as you just mentioned.
I answered as plainly as I could. The first time, I told him whatever was sufficient. The kind of answer that closes a conversation instead of opening one. After that, less and less. And, yes, Randall, that is the difficulty, isn't it? By the later encounters, we had technically met before. But that was not what he meant when he asked it. He was asking as if there were supposed to be a deeper continuity between us. Something recognized, something confirmed. As if I should say, yes, of course, it's still me. I did not see any reason to reassure him of that.
I hate to be that guy, but you are being very evasive with my questions, and it sounds like you were evasive towards this man due to his tone or vibe. Do you think maybe this could play into his reaction?
Possibly. Yes, I have considered that. But there is a difference between being reserved and provoking alarm. I was not hostile to him. I did not threaten him. I did not raise my voice or refuse service. I simply did not participate in the level of familiarity he seemed to want from me.
Okay, but what does that mean? He asked you if you had met before. What did you say to that? I mean, that's a pretty straightforward question.
I said, I don't believe so, which was the most accurate answer available to me at the time, because what he seemed to be asking was not, have our paths crossed? It was more like, are you the same one? And that is not a question most people know how to answer politely at a cash register.
So you misled him?
No, I do not think so. I think I answered the human version of the question he asked. If a man wants to know whether you remember his face, that is one thing. If he wants to know whether you persist from place to place, in the same form, that is a different question entirely.
He asked you a pretty direct question by your own description. Don't you think saying you had never met before when you had would just increase his confusion? It's certainly increasing mine.
I can understand that, but confusion was already present.
Yeah.
I did not create it. I only declined to organize it for him.
Okay, you're killing me here. I can't figure out what that means. My producer is telling me to cut you off, but lucky for you, I'm a nice guy. I'll give you one more chance, as succinctly as possible. What do you do for a living, and why did you mislead this supposedly odd customer?
I work nights in customer service.
That doesn't answer the question.
I sell people what they came in to buy. That is the job. And I did not answer him the way he wanted because his question was not really about the sale, or the store, or even whether we had crossed paths before.
So you're a traveling cashier. The average cashier makes like $13 an hour. That level of a skilled labor validates some kind of a travel expense account, huh? Room and board? Per diem? It sounds to me like you just don't know how to communicate at all.
That is possible, Randall. But poor communication does not usually cause the same man to look at you in 3 different states as though you have failed a test. And no, I would not describe myself as a traveling cashier. That seems to bother you more than it bothers me.
It bothers me because it doesn't make any sense. Sending someone across 3 states to dispense coffee and snacks, I am trying to give you the benefit of the doubt. And right now, I'm really regretting it. I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Okay? What does it say on your business card? What's the title? You must have one to identify yourself to coworkers when you show up to work shifts, right? Especially if they've never met you before, because, it's a whole new state.
I do not carry business cards.
Of course.
And titles are less useful than you're making them sound. But if it would help you, the closest term would probably be attendant. That is what most people seem to need me to be.
Need you to be? Yeah, that would go over great with my boss. Oh, you need me to host a show, but I am not a radio host.
Yes, that is a reasonable comparison, Randall.
Oh my God.
Except your listeners would notice if someone else sat in your chair and failed to sound like you. In my line of work, people usually do not listen that closely. They want coffee, fuel, change from a 20, a receipt. The role matters more to them than the person in it.
Except it didn't in the case of the customer you gaslit.
No. I think he arrived already unwilling to accept what was in front of him. All I did was refuse to help him turn that discomfort into certainty.
I recommend you turn that discomfort into a prescription for Zoloft. Goodbye, caller. Sorry for putting my expectation in you answering a simple, single question. Well, my friends, my producer Boyd tried to reel me in, but apparently my blood pressure got the best of me. If that was a prank caller, he definitely has a master's degree in troll. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back taking more of your calls as long as they're not that guy. I'm Randall Burr, and you're lost in the void. 9:40 a.m., KGAB.
You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. Talk to me. You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. We want to hear from you.
Welcome back to Lost in the Void. I'm Randall Burr. We're taking your calls here tonight, and my fearless producer Boyd is showing me a caller from all the way in Norway. That is a first for us here. Not sure if it's the clear night or maybe someone sharing our stream online again, which we can't legally recommend you do. Caller, you are lost in the void with Randall Burr. How are you?
Yes. Hello, Randall. This is Mikkel in Tromsø. I do not mean to disappoint you, but I think your last caller may have been less supernatural than socially incompatible. He sounded to me like a man with a very rigid way of describing things. Some people work nights too long, speak to too few others, and after a while they stop arranging their thoughts in the order everyone else expects. It does not make them sinister, only difficult.
Leave it to Norwegians to bring the pragmatism. So, what strange experience do you want to share?
It was near a frozen lake outside the city. Not terribly remote by our standards, though perhaps remote enough by yours. I was walking after midnight, and I noticed a blue light beneath the ice. At first, I thought it was a reflection, or perhaps a trick of depth. But it kept pace with me. Not quickly, not dramatically. It simply adjusted when I adjusted, as though it had decided that my shoreline was the correct one to follow. I stopped walking, and after a moment, stopped also. That was when it became difficult to continue believing it was a natural thing.
You said it moved too smoothly, or was something else about it particularly unnatural?
If it had drifted, or flashed, or moved on some course of its own, I think I would have accepted it more easily. But it seemed to respond to me specifically. When I slowed, it slowed. When I stopped, it stopped. That is a very unpleasant quality in a light.
Pardon my ignorance. This time of year is still light after midnight, right? Could it perhaps have been an odd reflection that simply followed you because your perspective changed?
That would be a sensible explanation, yes. And if it had only tracked with my angle, I think I would have accepted it and gone home less interested. But there was no midnight sun then. It was dark, properly dark. The ice held the light under it instead of giving it back. And what bothered me was not that it seemed to remain in view. It was that it seemed to wait when I did. A reflection does not, in my experience, become patient.
That is perhaps something reflection and myself have in common then. Has this kind of thing been reported out there before? I feel like I've heard about this before.
Yes, people say it has. Not in a way the authorities enjoy discussing, of course. But if you ask quietly enough, especially among older fishermen, you will hear that the lights are not new. They say the lights do not appear for everyone. And they say when they do appear, it is best not to let them keep your pace for too long.
Sounds ominous.
That is because it is usually followed by a more ominous sentence. They say if the light keeps pace with you long enough, it is no longer following. It has begun leading.
Yikes. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us, and I'm so happy to have you listening all the way on the other side of the world.
I am happy to listen. Though I admit, after that night I have become a little more selective about what I choose to follow.
Wise words from the land of the midnight sun. Looks like our old pal Pete is on the horn. You're on the air, pal. Did you forget something you wanted to share about your strange road encounters?
Yeah, I just thought I'd give you a call because I'm having deja vu, but it's worse.
Huh.
Is there a word for that?
I'm not sure the French have figured out the nomenclature for that one yet. But, what's going on?
Yeah, I stopped to gas up and use the facilities, and when I noticed that same damn cashier, I swear it was him. Just now. Same guy.
The one who...
Yeah, just never really answered me. Just blank stares. He's been in 5 states now that I know of.
You're not riffing off that caller before the break, the one who got my blood up, are you?
What? No, I hadn't been on the radio for the last 20 minutes. I was filling my tank, and I went in to hit the head and caffeine up. And when I saw that dead-eyed face watching me, I hightailed it out of there.
No confrontation on this occasion, then?
No, it was too weird. I hadn't seen him in a while, and all of a sudden, he's right there. I paid at the pump, and that's when I saw them all staring at me.
All who?
Everyone. Every single person at the truck stop. And it wasn't a small one either. It was huge and lit up bright. People were filling their trucks, staring. Folks were standing at their cars. Some were just standing in the lobby looking out the windows, and I got on out of there. I was sweating, man.
That that is bizarre, but maybe it was your truck. Maybe it was squealing or rattling, or you had toilet paper on your shoe or something. An awkward moment in the middle of the night combined with lack of caffeine can turn on you pretty quickly.
Well, I say you're right, but it ain't stopped.
You're in your truck, right? You left the stop.
Hell yeah, I did. I've driven this stretch dozens of times. There's almost never anybody out this late, but in my rear view, I see 5 or 6 cars. Bright sun, just right on my tail.
Well, sometimes folks just need to ride on a random stretch.
Been 15 miles, and not a single one I can see has passed me or taken an exit. I hadn't seen a single soul ahead of me neither.
It sounds to me like you're just unnerved from everything. I know often when people speak or hear about strange phenomenon like, say, sleep paralysis, they're more likely to experience it later that night.
It's weird, man. I'm just holding at 70, and I see a line of lights whenever there's a wind in the road, all of them moving in unison. I can't go any faster. I just hope they get where they're going.
It may be worth calling up the highway patrol, don't you think?
And tell them what? There are cars behind me?
You could ask them if there's any unusual highway activity, maybe a closure or something like that.
Phew. That's not a bad idea. Just, I've never seen anything like this. Decades on the road.
I'm sorry I can't be more help. I just hope this wraps up and soon for you. Maybe when it's all over and you chill out, this should be a motel and a hot shower night.
Ooh. Yeah, I hadn't had one of those in a while.
You stay safe out there, pal. Boyd and me are both thinking about you.
Thanks, man.
Anytime, old friend. We're going to take a break, and when we get back, we'll take even more of your calls about dark road encounters and so much more. All things that leave you lost in the void.
You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. Talk to me. You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. We want to hear from you.
Welcome back to Lost in the Void. I'm, of course, Randall Burr, and we're taking your calls on strange experiences. 308-157-6174 is the number to dial to share the darkness with a friendly voice. And boy, do we have many of you picking up that phone and reaching out. Caller, you're on the air with Randall Burr.
This is Dana in Concordia. I had a strange experience at a truck stop tonight as well. And I suppose I'm calling because I do not think the place was strange until one particular person decided it was. It seemed ordinary enough at first. Bright, tired, functional. The sort of place no one intends to remember.
Right.
Nothing obvious happened. No shouting, no scene, nothing you could point to cleanly. It was more that one person seemed to arrive carrying a private suspicion, and by carrying it visibly enough, started offering it to everyone else. Not in words, just in attention. And once that began, the place no longer felt neutral.
A private suspicion is what creeped you out?
Not exactly. What unsettled me was how quickly it stopped being private. Most people can be uneasy in public without changing the room. This felt different. It was as if he was looking for confirmation so intently that other people began wondering what, exactly, he thought he had found.
Okay, but how would that be unsettling? How would that How would that elicit that response?
Because attention is contagious. If one person keeps looking around as though something is wrong, everyone nearby begins asking themselves the same question, even if they had been perfectly comfortable a moment before. And once that happens, the room is no longer just a room. It becomes a place where something might be about to reveal itself.
Something like what?
That was the problem. He did not seem to know. If a person looks frightened of a gun, or an argument, or a fire, other people understand the category and respond accordingly. But this was less specific than that. He was looking at people, at the windows, at the whole place, as if he felt something was wrong, but had not yet decided where it was located. That kind of uncertainty spreads faster than a clear threat, because then everyone starts wondering whether it might be them.
I'm not sure I follow you, and I'm not sure how that works. Was he taking some sort of action? Sneaking around? Why would anyone be worried it might be them? What could happen?
No, that was what made it so unpleasant. He was not sneaking, not threatening, not doing anything a manager could reasonably intervene over. He was simply looking at people as though one of them might explain something to him. And when someone studies strangers that way, they begin to feel less like strangers and more like suspects.
Suspects of what?
Of being the thing that had disturbed him. Not guilty in any legal sense, more responsible somehow. He was looking at people the way someone looks at a room after hearing a noise in the walls. Not because he knows where it came from, but because he has decided it came from someone.
It sounds like you're speaking for more than just yourself. Are you saying this one guy made everyone feel threatened by looking around with concern?
Threatened may be too strong a word at first. Observed, perhaps. Drawn into something they had not agreed to. And yes, I am speaking for more than myself, but only in the modest way people sometimes can. You can feel when a room has begun sharing an emotion before anyone says so. People slow down. They look up. They stop being casual. He did not need to frighten everyone directly.
Okay. So this man frightens you and ostensibly everyone else at this truck stop, not by saying anything or literally doing anything, but by thinking wrongly of you.
Not exactly, no. It was not that he thought wrongly of me. It was that he seemed to think wrongly through us, as though the people around him were not people in the ordinary sense for a few moments, but possible explanations.
Possible explanations instead of people?
Or at least that is how it felt. Not enemies, not exactly. Just candidates. As if he had already concluded something was wrong, and was moving through the people around him, trying to determine which arrangement of faces would make the feeling make sense. That is a very uncomfortable way to be included in someone else's thinking.
Oh, okay. So his vibe was off, and it made everyone feel off. What happened next?
He moved through the place the way anyone might, too quickly to seem relaxed, too slowly to seem in a panic. He kept looking, not wildly, just with too much intention. At the cashier, at the people by the windows, out toward the pumps. And because he was behaving as though the place contained an answer, other people began behaving as though they might not want to be mistaken for one.
Hold on. You're saying a lot of nothing. Did the guy, leave or evaporate into nothing, or did he turn into an idea and become the damn Easter Bunny?
He left, Randall.
Oh.
That is what made the rest of it less comfortable, not more.
Right.
He left in the ordinary sense, went back out to his truck, pulled away, became someone else's headlights on the road. And yet, the feeling did not leave with him as completely as it should have. It was as if he had gone first, and the unease took a moment longer to decide whether it was staying or following.
So you're saying he upset you more by removing himself from the situation?
Not by removing himself, no. By revealing that he had not been the whole situation. If a man makes a place uneasy and then leaves, the place should correct itself. People should return to themselves. This did not happen as quickly as it ought to have.
Right. You said this happened tonight. Are you still at the truck stop then, or did you go about your business?
I went about my business, or I intended to. I left not very long after he did, and for a while that seemed like the end of it. But after some miles, I began to suspect the unease had not remained where it began. That is partly why I called. It is difficult to know when an atmosphere has ended and a pattern has started.
Are you trying to tell me you're on the road right now, following a truck?
That is the part I am trying to describe carefully.
Of course.
I got back on the highway, and after some time, I realized the truck ahead of me was his. Or, I believe it was. Same shape, same pace, same sense of deliberateness around it. And I would have passed under normal circumstances. I think several of us would have. But the spacing on the road has stayed strangely consistent. So, yes, I am behind a truck right now.
What do you mean by several of us? If you're trying to say you're part of the cars following Pete, then just say it. You've succeeded in sapping plenty of airtime.
I mean, there are other cars here, behind me, ahead of me when the road allows it, behind him. And I am not trying to say we are following him in the sense you mean it. That would suggest a decision, a plan, a shared purpose. I do not know that any of us would claim those things.
Who are you?
My name is Dana, and I know that is not the answer you mean. If you are asking what I do, I drive. If you are asking what I want, I would have said nothing unusual before tonight.
Do you have a job? A zip code? Did you go to high school? I'm getting tired of this runaround. I've known Pete as a listener for years. He's not in on this prank, so that means you're making fun of a genuinely scared man.
Yes to all three, Randall. I have a job. I have an address. I have lived an ordinary life in ordinary sequence, at least to the extent anyone ever proves that to another person over the radio. And I am not making fun of him. I am saying that fear is not always private once a person gives it enough structure. Sometimes it begins recruiting the things around it. People, distances, timing.
If you're serious, and God knows how you possibly could be, leave him alone. Take your line of creepy cars and get off the damn highway. Go terrorize a Buc-ee's or something. Get a new hobby.
If it were that simple, I think one of us would have done it already. That is what I am trying, perhaps badly, to explain to you. No one appears to be forcing anything. There is no swerving, no boxing in, no threat you could point to in a report. Just a continued failure to separate. And I do not think telling the road to stop being a pattern has much effect once it has become one.
Good night, caller. I know before I recommended medication, but now I'm thinking maybe it's time to wean off. We're gonna take a break on Lost in the Void. I'm Randall Burr, and I could use some blood pressure medicine right about now. We'll be back taking your calls for better or worse. 9:40 a.m. KGAB.
You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. Talk to me. You're You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. We want to hear from you.
It feels like we're all lost in the void. And I'm your host, Randall Burr. Our phone lines are open. I would read out the number, but all the lines are full, so I guess you don't need me to. All right, Boyd. Pick one at random and hit me with it. Caller, you're on the air.
I'm not sure what the hell's going on.
Pete? I think at best someone is playing a joke on me, and at worst, they're doing it to you too.
It doesn't feel like a joke. It's been miles, and the line of cars is going so far back now, I can't even see the tail end.
Did you talk to the highway patrol? Did they shine any light?
They told me to abide by the laws of the state highway.
What did you have to say to that?
I said stuff you ain't supposed to say on the radio, but it's not just that. I mean, I've called everybody on my phone, my boss, my ex-wife, my daughter. No one answers. No calls, no text. I can't raise anyone on the CB neither. Nothing.
We're talking. You've got me.
Yeah, you're the only one picking up. It's got me thinking some crazy shit. Sorry for the cussing.
I think sometimes that's the only word that applies.
Been thinking about the last few weeks, maybe month. I don't know that I've seen anybody.
I'm not sure what you mean.
I've seen these faces exactly where they should be and nothing else.
It can definitely feel that way when you're grinding day in and day out.
No, I'm not talking about boredom. I've been on the road forever. I mean, I'm the king of small talk. I mean, on the CB and whatever, and I mean, I make friends wherever I go. It's why I used to love this job.
I can't pretend that doesn't sound like a kind of psychosis, my friend.
You're telling me. I gotta know, when was the last time you saw somebody?
When I came in for show prep, I saw the receptionist and, of course, my fearless producer, Boyd.
Are you sure?
Yeah? How would I not be sure?
The receptionist, was she a blonde or a brunette?
She...
What I'm talking about. You don't know, do you?
I mean, maybe under the current pressure, I can't quite recall.
What about Boyd?
What about Boyd?
When'd you see him last? What about your wife? I mean, what color's her hair?
Well, Jen's hair is a beautiful shade of...
I'm real scared, man. I ain't never been this scared in my life.
I'm sorry, I'm not feeling right. I'm struggling to think right now.
I thought the scariest time of my life was serving in that sandbox, but right now I'd feel better if I ran into the Taliban.
Maybe try taking an exit.
I hadn't seen one in I don't even know how long.
Boyd, I'm getting your messages, but right now I'm not really worried about taking a break.
Make sure he's there. You just make sure
Pete, Pete, we lost you. Please call back. I want to make sure you're okay. Boyd, talk to me, all right? Don't send a message in. Get on your mic. Your headset. Boyd. Answer me right now, man. Right now. Where are you? Boyd. Anybody.
I'm here, Randall. You don't have to yell.
Are you all right? Everything okay?
Everything's fine on my end. Honestly, I thought you were doing a bit until you lost it like that.
I'm sorry. It's just you weren't answering me.
I was trying to get the brake loaded, that's why. And Randall, we have to take it now. Seriously. If we blow past again, Martin is going to be all over us in the morning. Come on, buddy.
Right. Martin. We'll be back right after these messages.
You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. Talk to me. You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. We want to hear from you.
Welcome back to Lost in the Void. I'm your host, Randall Burr. It's been a weird night, to say the least, but I suppose that's what you want when you tune in to a late-night discussion of the unknown and paranormal. I guess the positive spin would be it's been a very memorable night over the airwaves. Producer Boyd has talked me off the ledge, and now I'm ready to take your calls. No more letting the faceless trolls dominate my imagination. The lines are open at 308-157-6174, and I would love to hear your experiences in the out there. You're on with Randall Burr.
This is Tomás in Bahía Blanca.
Well, the airwaves do work in mysterious ways, but I'm glad to have you listening. What's on your mind?
Something happened out on a property near here recently, and I think it may belong in the category of things that are easier to feel than explain.
All right.
At first, nothing appeared wrong. That is important. There was no damage, no blood, no sign of forced entry, if that is the right phrase to use for open land. It was simply that the place had taken on the feeling of a decision having been made there before anyone present understood what it was. And once you notice that kind of arrangement in a field, it becomes difficult to keep calling it ordinary.
Okay, what kind of arrangement? Are you talking crop circles or something less common?
Less decorative than that. Not in the crops, in the animals. Though in may not be the best word. Around them, perhaps. Between them. It was not that anything had been done to them in the obvious sense. It was that they seemed to have accepted a pattern all at once, and were remaining faithful to it for reasons no one nearby could access.
Could you please be more specific? What happened? Something in a field, right? Like a farm, or?
Yes, a ranch property. Cattle. They were standing in a formation that no one recalled them entering, and no one could persuade them to leave. Not panicked, not agitated. That would have been easier. They were simply holding to it. Quietly, as though whatever had arranged them had not entirely finished speaking.
I'll give it to you, Tomas. You're a man of many words, but unfortunately, airtime isn't free. Try to cut to the chase, all right? So cattle are acting strange, standing in an unusual formation. Was anything else odd going on in the area? Strange lights, sounds, something like that?
There was a sound. not loud. That is part of why people kept second-guessing themselves about it. If it had been machinery or thunder or some obvious intrusion, at least it would have belonged to a category. This did not. It was a low hum, but not steady enough to ignore and not varied enough to call music. More like the ground had begun holding a note and the animals had decided it was worth listening to.
You're assuming a lot of the mentality of cows, don't you think?
That is fair. I am describing it from the outside, of course. But when animals refuse food, refuse prodding, refuse habits they have kept for years, one is left either to assign them intention or admit that something less comfortable may have been supplying it for them.
Have the cattle died? You said they were refusing food. Did they maintain this formation indefinitely, or did it end just as suddenly as it began?
No, not died. Not then. And I should be careful. Refusing may sound more dramatic than it looked in the moment. It was more that food ceased to matter for a while. Water also. The usual little motives that keep animals moving through a day seemed to lose their authority.
Well, yeah, I wasn't suggesting they were otherwise immortal. They're cows. They die inevitably like all living things. Refusing food and water for a short time isn't an uncommon mistake for a sick or upset animal.
That is true. And if it had been one animal, or a few, or anything with the untidiness of ordinary illness, I do not think I would have called. But sickness is usually individual first and collective second. This felt collective first. That is what made it difficult to regard as merely veterinary. They were not each behaving badly in their own way. They were behaving correctly together, according to something no one else had been shown.
Isn't that what cattle do? Behave collectively? We even use the phrase like cattle to describe operating in unison.
Yes, to a point. But there is a difference between herd behavior and compliance. A herd follows appetite, alarm, habit, the movement of the nearest body. This was quieter than that, more exact.
Okay, well, thanks for the call and best of luck with the whole situation, as vague as it may be. Caller, you're on the air with Randall Burr. Hopefully you're a bit more concise of a speaker. Word salad seems to be the special on the menu tonight.
Yes, hello, Randall. This is Leah in Thompson, Manitoba. I'll try to be more economical than your last caller.
Thank heavens for small miracles. Up in the Great White North, eh? We really are becoming a global experience for listeners. Please, go ahead.
I'm calling because I heard something on weather radio that I do not think belonged there, and I have been having a hard time convincing myself it was only interference.
There seems to be a lot of talk about those kinds of phenomenon as of late. So what exactly did you hear?
A voice. Calm. Very calm. Not the tone they use for watches or warnings. No urgency, no official cadence, none of that clipped authority weather radio has when it wants you to take shelter and stop asking questions. This was quieter than that. More certain. It said not to look at the tree line.
Right. Don't emergency warnings tend to be kind of deadpan? I mean, they don't speak in a panicked tone since that would be counterproductive.
Yes, they do. But deadpan is not the same thing as intimate. This did not sound like a system speaking to everyone at once. It sounded like something addressing the people already awake. That was the distinction. An alert informs. This sounded like it already knew who was listening.
I think I follow you, but at the same time, I have to ask, why were you tuned into emergency radio? Was there something going on at the time?
It's common enough up here to leave one on at night, especially if the weather has been shifting. You stop noticing it until it says something worth noticing. That was part of what made this worse. I wasn't sitting there in fear waiting for a message. I was doing something ordinary, half listening, when the ordinary voice was replaced by one that seemed to understand it had found me already.
So people were already listening, and as you explained, it's not uncommon. So why is it strange that it acted like it knew?
Because it did not sound as though it had found an audience. It sounded as though it had found witnesses. There is a difference.
Right. Is there anything unusual about that particular tree line?
Not in daylight, no. That is part of the problem. It was just trees. Black spruce, mostly. The sort of edge your eyes slide over 100 times without consequence. No lights in it. No movement I could swear to. Nothing theatrical. But after the message, it stopped feeling like scenery. It felt like the part of the night that had been listening back.
Right. Well, thank you for calling, I guess. Stay safe out there, though I guess not by listening to the radio anymore. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll be taking some more of your calls as the evening continues to twist and turn. Lost in the Void with Randall Burr.
You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. Talk to me. You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. We want to hear from you.
Lost in the Void, Randall Burr. That's the name of the show and who I am. And we're going to take a few more calls as we wrap up a night for the record books in the realm of our show and maybe radio as a whole. All right, maybe I'm getting a little too highfalutin, but regardless, we're still somehow happy to take your calls. Caller, you're lost in the void, and man, does the void feel deep tonight.
Yes, hello Randall. This is Arjun in Rajasthan. I am calling because there is a temple near where I live that has begun making itself difficult to ignore, and I do not think the difficulty is entirely religious in nature.
Whoa, hold on. Rajasthan as in India?
Yes, Rajasthan, India. I realize your show covers a great deal of territory in a single night, but in this case, the geography is real enough. The temple is as well. The difficulty, I think, begins after that.
But how are you listening? Is it some kind of unauthorized web stream or something? I know we have a mighty tower for our station's size, but that's the whole other side of the planet.
Not by your tower, Randall, by a copy of your voice. That is common now, yes? A thing said once can continue arriving elsewhere long after it has left the room. I found your program online. The temple, unfortunately, does not seem to require the internet.
You certainly took your sweet time to get to that revelation. Hold on a second. Yeah, we talked about Rajasthan earlier tonight. Now you happen to be calling in. I get it now. You want to enjoy riling up the small-town talk radio guy. Guess that's your idea of fun, huh?
No, Randall. If I wanted only to rile you, I would have called much earlier and spoken much less carefully. I am calling because you mentioned the bells.
Less carefully. If I didn't know any better, I'd say that was a threat. Tough talk from a guy on the phone.
No, not a threat. Only an observation about tone. You are treating this like a prank because that is the safer category. I understand that. But where I am, people stopped enjoying that category some time ago.
Cute. Well, next time you want to get your jollies, don't do it by wasting my f***ing time with this shit. My apologies to Boyd in the booth for having to catch those words flying before they snag us a fine from the FCC. Well, this will certainly be a night for the record books. All right, let's take one more call before we wrap up for the night. Caller, you're on with Randall Burr.
Yes, hello, Randall. This is Mara in Kearney.
Ah, good, a local caller. Was half expecting this call to be coming from the International Space Station. So, what would you like to share with us?
I had an experience a while back on a dark road with someone I was trying in my own way to help. And I have never been entirely sure whether he understood that.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity even in my, let's say, agitated state. Please, continue.
It was on a road outside town, years ago now. Sparse traffic. The kind of night where a single pair of headlights feels less like company than a measurement of how alone everything else is.
I'm a lot less excited now, but why stop now?
I was off the shoulder. That is important because I do not want to give the impression I stepped into the lane or meant to endanger anyone. I was where a person could reasonably be without becoming an obstacle. The driver came along looking tired in the particular way that worries you. Not asleep, not intoxicated, just thinned out. Too much road behind the eyes. And I had the sense, very strongly, that if he kept going in that condition, he was going to give his attention to the wrong thing at the wrong moment. So I tried to make contact.
That's scary even in the least paranormal of situations. A car without an attentive driver is a danger to everyone. So how did you try to make contact?
I raised a hand toward the window. Only that. Not pounding, not grasping, nothing wild. Just enough to bring his attention back into one place at one time. A very simple signal.
From the side of the road, you raised a hand to get his attention.
Or toward the side of the car, if you prefer it that way. These things become imprecise very quickly in memory, especially when one person is moving and the other is trying not to cause alarm. What I mean is, I made the smallest gesture available to me that still had some chance of being noticed. I did not think of it as reaching into his space. I think he did.
Sounds dangerous to reach toward a moving car. You'd have to be pretty close for a hand to be able to signal him.
Closer than he liked, certainly. Closer than I meant to feel.
What does that mean? Be specific, please. People are trying to understand you. And it's me. I'm people.
I mean, it did not feel close until he reacted to it. From my perspective, I was making a small, practical gesture from the roadside. From his, I think it became a hand at the window.
Like, at the window or inside the car?
No, not inside. But near enough to be mistaken for that, I think.
You think you know what the motorist felt? You signaled him in a startling way because you saw some vague signs he was in danger?
There is a particular kind of driver who is no longer fully where the road is. You can see it in the pace, in the way the vehicle holds itself just a little too rigidly, as if the person inside is using attention to keep something else out.
Right. Of course. I think I've heard this story before, so, Mara, what do you do for a living? Where did you go to school? What's your mother's first name?
I do ordinary work, Randall. I went to school where I was sent, and my mother had a name people used when they needed her attention. If you're asking whether reciting credentials would make the story feel safer, I do not think it would.
I'm trying to figure out if you're an honest caller or another one of these people derailing my show for their own amusement at the cost of my audience.
No, Randall. If I wanted amusement, I would have made myself easier to enjoy.
Good night, bitch. Congratulations, you f***ed around, and now you found out. Thanks again, Boyd, for being on top of that button. I know it's hard to do on top of running the board. Wait, but shit. How are you catching them perfectly? Usually the dump misses at least a second of it, but I'm hearing you dead on. How am I hearing it? It's on a delay to air. Boyd, what's going on with the headset? Boyd, are you there? Fuck. What is your last name? Are you tall or short? Shit. When did we meet? Was it before I went to nights? Where's the door? Where's the green room? I thought I don't know, it was on the left side. Right? Or... Fuck. I don't know. I want to go home to Jen. She's... It. There's nothing else. It's all I am. It's just this. It's over. Thank you for joining us tonight on Lost in the Void. I've been your host, Randall Burr. And that's all there is. That's the end of our show for the evening. Good night.
You're listening to KGAB Ogden, Nebraska. Happening.
Do not look at the tree line. Do not look at the tree line. Do not look at the tree line.
I can't lie, my spookies. I feel very proud of myself because not only do I feel like we got the AM radio vibe accurately, but I got kind of Halloween-style goosebumps when I was editing and listening back to the show. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you, and I want to say a huge thank you to Dwayne Whitaker for joining us on this kind of experiment almost. He really brought everything I needed from his character, and it was an honor to work with him. He's been in so many films I admire, and I do consider him a friend. So thank you, Dwayne, and thank you guys so much for joining us on our 400th episode. It's kind of mind-boggling, but I'm so proud of everything we've built here at Weekly Spooky, and I hope you've been enjoying everything we do and know that we will not be stopping. There are only more scary stories to come, so make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app, and if you've been putting it off, why not join our Patreon today? For as little as $1 a month, you get 2 bonus episodes every single month, over 5 years of audiobooks and creepypasta readings, and my undying gratitude. And speaking of, a special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, Johnny Nix, Kate and Lulu, Jessica Fuller, Mike Eschewey, Jenny Green, Amber Hansford, Karen Ouimet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much, and if you head to weeklyspooky.com/join and sign up at the $15 a month or higher mark, you can hear your name at the end of every episode as well. The support really does mean a lot to me. So thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart for joining us. Whether you just started or you've been with us since episode 1, it means so very much to me. But now it's time for me to get back to it. There might be something surprising on the feed tomorrow, so make sure you're subscribed. For my executive producers Rob Fields and Bobbletopia.com, my producer Dan Wilder, and my composer Ray Mattis, I will talk at you very soon.
Thank you for joining us. 400 Stories was only the beginning. So beware. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.